Good, it stopped. Good evening, everyone. Ah, no, it hasn't. All right, now it's stopped. Good evening, everyone. It's been a little bit.
Oh, wait.
Yes, we can
Yeah,
hear you.
it's been a little bit. It's been a hot minute since we've been on.
I
So,
claim responsibility for us losing the schedule, because it's been a rough couple weeks, and it's been getting to me. I'll be honest, and I kind of didn't want to talk about it. I still don't know if I want to talk about it, but we're kind of at the point where we should talk about it. It's been, a wild ride if you have a 401k the last week, which most people do actually, even pensions having gone the way of the dinosaur. And it's been an even wilder ride if you
do
care.
government workers have
Do government workers
do
have?
government workers have 401ks?
They can. I should still. Most of them have.
That's what I was wondering. I don't know what their system is.
Palm Dad probably is very well aware of that and is in the audience, but I'm pretty sure they do have the. Like, I suspect it is not dissimilar to how my last job was, where I have a small pension and a 401k that I invested into. Um, they do TSP. Yes. Okay. Yes, they do. Uh, yeah, I suspect that's exactly how it works. Is they have a 401k and a pension, or maybe not, but the everyone took a beating in the market last week, whether they want to admit it or not. Trump supporters were going absolutely crazy and admitting they don't understand things like numbers and percentages and the stock market and how tariffs work. And you just saw this wild arrangement of justifications for what was happening. Meanwhile, every stock market across the globe just fucking plummeted like a rock. Months and months and months of growth just wiped out. And these are not uncommon things to have happen. Like, the markets take a dip, usually because people kind of inadvertently walk into something stupid. But this was different, I think. Uh, what's the best way to make this TOS? This was a self-harm attempt by Donald Trump on the national economy. So we've talked a little bit about tariffs and how they work, but in essence, a tariff is a tax placed on a good that is being imported into a country. And historically, tariffs have been used for a lot of things. They are the bedrock of the economic ideology of mercantilism, for example, that dominated European history for decades and decades and fueled a considerable amount of our current problems and crises. But tariffs have largely not been used in this way than they were in, for example, the late 1700s and 1800s, where they functionally funded governments. And the idea behind mercantilism is that you are benefited when you can bring in the most to your nation. So this fuels the concept of colonies and the concept of expanding and the concept of controlling trade. And a lot of a lot of this is pretty well understood historically, unless you're Donald Trump, and his cabinet apparently, that tariffs fuel conflicts as well. Like the 7 Years' War, he called the French and Indian War here in the United States, was at least in part fueled by trade disputes and tariffs. So it was to everyone's great shock when Donald Trump announced a tariff scheme that was bewildering, including the attempt to impose tariffs on uninhabited islands filled with penguins. I guess you don't find that nearly as
Oh,
funny.
wait, you're
as I
talking
do.
about
Herd Island, yes. Nearly as funny.
you're talking about the yeah, no, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
The reversal of the tariffs kind of reminds me, like, it strikes me as like um things were getting so disastrous that it's like, have you ever heard of Stalin's dizzy with success speech or
Yes.
um directive? So it essentially occurred when collectivization was, started to result in, you know, food shortages and famines, and also a lot of popular resistance moving. So he reversed temporarily the more harsh measures of it. And this kind of is what it feels like. I think that they're gonna resume probably tariffs, but obviously things weren't going well. But I mean, the whole policy is kind of, what he ran on, right?
Yeah.
So this isn't the end of it.
No. So, like, I think that's probably like a parallel, maybe. But here's what I've noticed about Donald Trump in the last couple months. Like, especially like normally a new presidency gets off to a rocky start, but Trump has been here before, so he should kind of have an idea of how things work. He just doesn't seem to give a crap. So I've noticed a lot that Donald Trump has been sort of like throwing weight around to against other countries and failing. So you had that bit where he's shackling people on deportation flights to Colombia, and the president of Colombia tells him to get stuffed, and Donald Trump ends up having to get stuffed, and like the right wingers go, well, we got the people deported, so we won. But no, you had to turn the plane around. Colombia sent its own plane and insisted that you treat these people with a basic decorum of decency, and don't turn around and shackle them to the plane. And then you saw the meeting with Zelensky and how magnificently this backfires on Trump, and he has to kind of, you know, now he's walking this weird tightrope with Russia and Ukraine and Europe that he's totally ill-equipped to walk, and he looks like an idiot. And the Russians are just running circles around us with regard to getting any kind of ceasefire. You're not going to see a ceasefire, right? It's just not going to happen. Uh,
No,
and then
it won't until
you get this thing where Netanyahu comes to
um
visit, and he's expecting to have a meeting with Trump, and he's all excited because Donald Trump is not stopping Israel from their resumption of murdering the women and children of Gaza at all, at one bit. He's not even saying, lifting a finger. And then Donald Trump snubs him and says, "We're going to negotiate with Iran," and that's that. Or just this tariff thing where he was forced to almost immediately walk back on the tariffs because he became a laughingstock. And he's even had to walk back on the tariffs on China because A, he didn't put into place the infrastructure to collect the tariffs. B, um, they were stupid. You're not going to win a trade war because it doesn't matter how much tariff you put on Chinese goods. You will not make it cheaper to produce things here in the United States than you will to a country that literally has political prisoners sewing soccer balls with their teeth. It's just not going to happen. The things that Americans would have to
yeah.
do to win a trade war with China, they would never accept. You would never, you'd quit. You'd run away. You'd have to be locked in the factory too. So it was the dumbest possible move, and now he has had to retreat from it. And of course, they keep trying to spin it like it's some kind of great victory, like, oh, they're coming to talk about things. They're going to take Trump's lunch money. China is, all these countries are. They're going to line up and stiff him. Look at what's happening with Canada. How do you piss off the country that's known for apologizing? But here we are. Canadians aren't going to visit the United States, and we're going to lose thousands and millions of dollars of tourist revenue.
Yeah.
Everything that Donald Trump has done over the last few months has been a disaster. He's just failed in every measure possible in interacting with the broader world. The only thing he's really been successful at and is engaging in the utter destruction of due process in the United States. with the deportation of critics of Israel and critics of Russia, and God knows who's going to come next. Um, it's I made the comment to a family member I was talking to, is like, I've noticed that anyone in the United States who attempts to stand up to Trump gets bowled over, and it doesn't matter how tiny or insignificant the guy is. If they're not in the United States, they kick Trump's ass. Like, he just gets obliterated
Yeah.
by everyone and the rest of the world. Um, there was this, I don't remember the senator off the top of my head, did a little criticism of Trump, and the next day her family farm gets raided by ICE. Like, this is not, what's the best word? This is, I don't want to be
It's a little bit
hyperbolic.
beyond the pale, right?
This isn't the end of the world, but you can see it from there, is the phrase that keeps ringing out in my mind. Um, it's it's a wee bit dystopian. I'll be honest. Especially like we talked a little about Liz Cheney, and I know you hate Liz Cheney, you hate Dick Cheney, you want them to be poofed, but in Minecraft. But Liz Cheney voted with Donald Trump in his first term 97% of the time. It would be hard to be more of a Trump ally than Liz Cheney was during his term, and she takes one stand about a clearly outrageous action Donald Trump takes, and she is utterly blackballed. He has a terrifying amount of hold over his party, and now he has a hold over the institutions of government, and no one seems to be willing to check him, even in the opposing party. Like, the Democrats have continued to sort of sit there and, please, sir, may I have another, the entire thing. To what end, I don't know. It comes down to
And
what.
apparently,
Go
some
ahead.
of our best academics are moving out of the country and claiming that no, this was already a plan that they had established before Trump was elected, and that's a little bullshit. Calling
Well,
out Timothy Snyder and
yeah, I know
Marcy Shore.
you're not a big fan of Timothy Snyder either, but I hear Canada's
I can
lovely this time
acknowledge
of
that
year.
Timothy Snyder is not a bad historian. He's not a bad scholar.
He's
It's
just
just that
he's kind of a dick.
he let a lot of stuff get to his head, and what he was saying there, I think, is wrong. He should be admitting that, he did leave because of the situation. There's nothing wrong in that. But he wants to, be a dissident, but also not look like he's a coward either.
He's got to sell
Give me a moment.
books.
I'm gonna be right back.
Sure. Yeah,
What do you say?
he's got to sell
Yeah, one
books.
second.
We will take a short
Yeah,
break
he
for
does.
tissues. Well, and there is an uncomfortable fact that we probably should acknowledge. Popular history books are overwhelmingly purchased by conservatives. Um, that's who they're written for, usually. Very often. It's very rare that you see a popular history book that's intended for a broad mass audience that is not written to not offend conservative sensibilities. So if you are a popular historian, as we are not, then it behooves you to make conservatives less mad. On the flip side to that particular observation, I would note that, like, the Howard Zinns of the world also kind of lay it on a little thick. So, pick your poison. Um, I I actually read A People's History of the United States pretty young. It was a textbook in my high school. Um, and it's really easy to get wrapped up in that rhetoric. But, like, there is a difference between acknowledging those
I'm
unrecorded
back.
on, oh, we're talking about the problem with popular histories mostly being written for conservatives.
That is true.
The conservatives are the ones who buy them, so it's by and large is who they get written for. That's why a lot of popular history doesn't focus on a lot of the newer scholarship that tends to be more inclusive. You know, all that DEI woke stuff that is so pervasively destroying our society, and sarcasm. Um, so it behooves Timothy Snyder to walk a very, very narrow, thin line in his being a dissident. I think I I uh I was making a couple
You
comments
know,
about.
the thing about
Sure,
him
go ahead.
is that there's not a whole lot that in terms of even with his popular history, with On Tyranny, with I haven't read On Freedom yet. There's a lot I agree with him on, quite frankly. Most of my issue with him is just kind of how he presents himself.
Yeah,
Um
I think that's I think that's actually, let's
and
just.
it's also kind of, there's another thing he said, I got to send you the he came out with a statement just recently about why he moved and how this wasn't a planned thing, and it kind of contradicts what his wife was saying. Marcy Shore was also, a Yale historian, um, who basically said, the environment is why they left. Um, and he moved from Yale. Basically, you can't really get anything better. In that's like the highest pinnacle of higher education you can get. And as far as
Harvard is
funding for
furiously
his
typing in
research,
the chat right now.
they are. But you get what I mean.
Yeah.
The amount of funding, if you want to do research and you are in his position, is in. I was talking with this with one of my panel members, when I did my master's, Dr. Laszlo Borges, like, in regards to Timothy Snyder, the amount of resources that Yale offers someone like that is, you know, it's virtually limitless. So he's talking about how, moving to Monk, which is not, he's not in, it's the Monk School at University of Toronto. It's global studies, international studies school. They have great, I mean, it's great for Ukrainian studies, which, Timothy Snyder is a part of, but the amount of resources and money that they have is not, it's not at the same level as Yale. And it's not a history program. So with what he was saying, he's kind of, it kind of goes against it contradicts what he's saying in that
Well,
response that he made.
I think uh, you've made a point that I'm going to harp on a little bit, because you talked about how he doesn't necessarily, you don't necessarily disagree, and that's with what he's saying. You just don't necessarily like him. That is a really like powerful thing to be able to recognize, I think, because very much in these spaces we get into the case where we tend to evaluate the source of the discussion rather than what the discussion is saying. Um, and in some cases, a lot of streamer cases, that's probably fair. But in others, like, there are commonalities between people that I really don't like and don't agree with, of things that we agree with. Like, I think you'd find a lot of places where there are things that I agree with conservatives. I think that we need to address the immigration system, make it easier to
Yeah.
make it easier and more transparent and less of a scam, make it so that it's less a problem, and to alleviate the stress of having this underclass of people, um, functionally helping support our society without being able to take full part in it. So but then, like, the language around that can become twisted too, because like I say reform, they say reform. What reform means to them is we start throwing brown people in volcanoes. So this is where you
Yeah.
kind of arrive at the importance of kind of critical thinking, that old buzzword that gets thrown around a lot.
Yeah.
And like for his part, even though he's at Yale, I like all the professors that I've gotten in touch with, like through Twitter and Blue Sky with this channel, and it's been quite a few. We're kind of popular with professors for some reason. I think it's because I'm witty. um,
That's good.
like they all say that the situation in higher education hiring is bleak, and that the
Oh, it's
situation,
horrible right now.
yes, is bleak and getting
And in
people all
terms
the
of what
time.
is, that's another thing that we have to talk about, the funding for it. You know, all those federal grants, the National Endowments for Humanities, they've been gutted horribly.
Yes.
And that's something that Snyder in that article mentions, you know, that the first thing an authoritarian government goes to attack, you know, in terms of this is a pattern that you see, is higher education. I don't think though that Timothy Snyder is at risk of being, you know, there's still due process here. There's still, you know, like there's,
Yeah.
you know,
The the due processing is tricky because it when
well,
you
let's just put it this way. If you're not a brown person whose, you know, legal status is questionable, you know, and which is definitely not Timothy Snyder, your due process is more and more likely to work for him
sure, but
than it is for someone in a vulnerable position.
by the same token, uh, plenty of people who are legal American citizens are swept up. Plenty of people who are legal residents are being basically abused by American border and entry checkpoints. Like due process is very seriously, and like
Bobby Fischer, the famous chess player, was stripped of his citizenship because Bush Jr. was offended by him.
sure, but
I
that
mean,
hasn't been a wide.
I mean, I mean, what more
Has
can
it?
you like? You was like born here. I've never heard of something like that happening. I don't even think they did that to Edward Snowden, did they?
Well, if they ever get the chance, they're going to execute him, and rightly so.
He shouldn't be executed, but
The penalty for treason is treason is a capital offense, sir.
I know that. But you know, what if I'm for? What if I'm against capital punishment? It's a big what if. You know that I am not.
I know that you're
But
not, and that I am in most cases, but
yeah, that's the thing. You're okay with, you know, he did not murder anyone at all, by the way.
he did dump a whole bunch
Yeah,
of
you know,
intelligence
I feel like
information.
I feel like, you know, this is the thing about me and you. I'm much, much more likely, you know, to want to see that guy in Texas who may, you know, at, I don't know, age 18, you know, murdered someone in a horrible way. You know, I don't want to get into details because we are, you know, we don't want to be demonetized, but you know, I'm more likely to be like, yeah, that guy should, you know, the state should execute that person. Whereas treason, especially in his case, and I'm not a fan of the guy, but you know, that's not an, you know, like you would be like okay, you know, like maybe, you know, that guy was 18 and you know, okay, his brain isn't fully developed, but you know, Snowden, that guy, totally evil.
Well, let's let's rack this
Yeah, well,
up.
that's a whole different debate.
Well,
That's a whole different thing.
but my point, I think it's germane to this because the situation that we are in now with Donald Trump and these people is because they don't see a real penalty for subverting the Constitution. Nothing, they don't think anything's going to happen to them. And like, there is a little teeny weeny part of me that, you know, thinks back to Thaddeus Stevens' vision of Reconstruction, where almost certainly people like Robert E. Lee and Jefferson Davis would have swung uh, for what they had done in his particular vision of Reconstruction. And like, uh, I can't help but wonder if people felt that there was a concrete penalty for betraying the nation, that they might be less inclined to do it because it is such a very outrageous set of actions. And like, I get that like personal crimes against
What is
people and
betraying the nation, though? I mean, what would be the criteria? You'd have to have very strict criteria to what that means,
well, we
because
do
you can
have very,
totally alter that.
we do have fairly strict
That's
criteria.
basically becoming an
It's
enemy of the people, right?
it's well, no, it requires a set of acts witnessed by at least two people that are directly contrary to the interests of the United States and its people.
Give me
Uh,
one moment. I have to pee real quick. I'll be right back.
we are having bladder issues tonight.
Yes, I am.
Well, how is everybody? You having a good time? Are you enjoying your authoritarian dictatorship? Are you enjoying the loss of of basically the chance to more of your lifetime earning potential, to the utter destruction of the stock market? Is it fun? I'm not having fun. I am absolutely not having fun. The problem, largely with market issues like this, is so, and we saw this in 2008, we saw this in 2020 too. Markets take a big hit. You and I, we lose a lot of buying power to our dollar from things like inflation. Supply side inflation in particular does a big thing for that because there's also less for us to buy. Uh, People who are already rich get access to money on credit and then turn around and start buying up assets like houses and other things, and they end up coming out on top. They get wealthier, everyone else gets less wealthy, and the cycle continues. The disaster that we saw in the last few weeks in the markets is going to basically, without significant reforms to our economic systems, permanently place millions into poverty. It is beyond a doubt one of the principal issues of our age. You are going to also not, you haven't seen the worst of what's happening yet. Prices are going to go up. You're going to have a harder time. Supply is going to go down, pushing prices up even further. Consumer confidence is going to fall. They're going to have a really hard time convincing people to invest, to buy. They're going to lower interest rates, and then the richest are going to invest in high yield objects and things like homes, bonds, stocks. They're going to gain more wealth. You're going to have a much harder time, a much harder time going forward in meeting your basic needs, especially if you happen to be in a place that's reliant functionally
I'm back.
on big box stores like Walmart, which is going to actually be murdered in price raises when the time comes. Yes, we were talking about treason.
Yes.
Yeah. The fact is that this requirements to prove treason are outlined in the Constitution and are so incredibly strict that no one has ever been successfully tried for federal treason, even though there are arguable cases.
The Rosenbergs?
I'm sorry, the Rosenbergs are an exception, but like by and large, people don't get charged for treason at the federal level. One of the bigger ones that I can think of off the top of my head is John Brown, who was charged for treason by the state of Virginia. Like, it doesn't happen that often. The problem is that it's inarguable that someone like Jefferson Davis or Robert E. Lee or the Confederates committed treason. They took an oath. They took an oath to the country, and then they broke it. They took an oath to uphold the Constitution as as officers of the military and as politicians, and they broke it. You
That's
have
right. Well, yeah, there's no argument that they
Edward
didn't.
Snowden, who took a similar oath as an officer of the NSA, and not he had a route to engage in reporting illegal activity. He didn't report illegal activity. He reported activity he disagreed with, and then dumped hundreds of documents in Russia for Russian intelligence. We don't know fully what the fallout from that, what the consequences of that are. So it's not accurate to say that he has not caused harm, because we don't know what sources were harmed and the long-term effects of that. I don't I don't think this is an academic point. I understand the desire to see murderers and rapists executed. I do. I'm not heartless or indifferent to the processes and the pain of victims and families of crime,
I
victims of
know that.
crimes. But the ultimate issue I have is that so often we have a judicial system that is malicious, and a law enforcement system that is malicious, and leaving that kind of power in their hands is unnecessary. It doesn't, it hasn't solved the problem. It fuels the worst impulses of people. Like, for all the talk of how conservatives want us to be a Christian nation, they sure as hell don't see much stock in forgiveness and
No, they don't.
reconciliation. And like
That whole very important aspect of of Christianity is kind of ignored.
that fundamental building block, yeah, of
Yeah.
Christianity is very, very just gone, um, amongst other things. And so like I think, like, with the
But
exception of
the
what is
whole
required
system
to preserve the well-being of the people of a nation, that perhaps vengeance should be left to the Lord. It's we've lost Hetman again. Okay, Avery is being very needy, very, very needy, but he has been fed and watered and walked all day and given all the cuddles, but now he needs to go lay down. Yes, be a good dog. Yeah.
All right.
I got a dog, help with my health, and it turns out I'm his emotional support human.
Yeah, that's what you get when you get a rescue dog. That's kind of,
Yeah.
especially rescue chihuahuas for some reason.
For everyone who hasn't seen a picture of Avery, he's much more healer than he is Chihuahua. He just has a very Chihuahua face.
But
Go lay down. Yes, I know. Oh, good boy. Go lay down. You kind of start to see, like, way too many cases of people who shouldn't have been executed being executed, and now we're staring at down the barrel of Stephen Miller arguing that people don't have rights. And I can't help but feel that Stephen Miller and the righties would throw a fit if, after all this is over, we just decide to deport him, because people don't have rights. And that's, I think, the biggest problem with my assessment here is, or rather your assessment of us still having
due process.
due process, is that it's a very situational thing, which means it's not due process. To borrow Billy Bragg's line in the Internationale, it's just privileges extended unless enjoyed by one and all. And that's a problem, because due process is supposed to exist regardless of whether or not you like the person to whom is accused of the crime. Like, consider how dangerous that is in the case of the man you mentioned who performed that murder. Well, you don't like him, so he dies.
Yeah.
I just, it probably seems like a very different, like, it might be a little hypocritical on my end, but I'm fine with it.
I mean, that's not a bad thing to admit.
Like, I'm cool with it. And yeah, just broadly, everyone is fine with their own personal hypocrisies. That's why it's not really useful to point out why everyone's a hypocrite. Like, yes, I am, but I'm okay with it. That's basically everyone's
No.
running line. And that's kind of been. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I forgot what I was gonna say.
Yeah, okay. I'll pick back up then. Like, that's, I think, been the biggest, hardest part of this, is watching like these people being scooped up and saying, "Oh, this is a gang member. We're going to deport them immediately." And like, yeah, are they? And why would you send them to El Salvador, in the prison of a lunatic man who is lowering crime by changing the definition of crime? That seems extreme and not useful.
I would not call, what's his name? Shit, I was just talking about him.
Yeah, I can't remember the president of El Salvador's name off the top of my head. That guy. The one with the crazy eyes.
The world's coolest dictator. Wait. Crap. It's actually an Arabic last name. He has like some Lebanese roots, I believe. Bukele.
Yeah, I'm looking up now. Anyway,
Yeah. Don't be hating on Bukele.
Why? Yes, I know he gets very upset.
He's like, I mean, okay, look at it this way. He has changed that country for the better.
No, he hasn't. Not even remotely.
A lot of support.
He has a lot of support, but he's not changing that country for the better. You know what they're doing, right? They're just changing.
It was great. It was running fantastic before.
It's running the same. It's the exact same. He's just lying about the crime numbers.
No, it's not. There's no crime.
Yes, there's crime everywhere. He's just not counting the certain criminal acts as crime in order to decrease the numbers. There's crime everywhere in El Salvador.
You got to focus on violent crimes and gang crimes. You can't just, like,
he's not reporting gang crimes.
Gets to that level,
gang crimes are still happening every day in El Salvador. They're just not being reported as crimes. There are multiple articles about this. I'll send you one. I'll send you a couple and a video on it.
Okay.
It's just absolute bullshit what he's up to. It's that bit in Babylon 5 where it's like, oh, there's no crime anymore. Anyone who wants a job can have it. Therefore, there's no unemployment. It's just bullshit. It's the same kind of nonsense that you've seen time and time again.
Yeah. Well, there's,
that prison is
the president of Honduras next door, who's actually pretty far. Like, I mean, she's definitely a left-leaning person, wants to emulate him. So, I don't know. I think it's hard for me to look at El Salvador or a country like that, where proportionally, when it was bad, the murder rate and everything else, and how it was just destroying the very fabric of life there.
It's still doing that, though. It's still happening. You can't say it's not happening.
You haven't shown me the articles yet.
Okay, but you like,
and I've seen my own evidence. I don't think you're lying, but I think it's probably a very slanted article, because there's a lot of people that, obviously he's in order to do what he did, you have to suspend the rights of people.
Yes, and that's all they've had. That's all they've done, is they've suspended rights, and the crime continues. It's not like criminals go, oh, darn, I don't have rights anymore. I guess I better stop. We've known for
Well, but you
decades.
stop when you're able to lock them up without due process.
Hey, my viewers.
There
Well,
anyway.
yeah, but
When you
no,
have
it
that
doesn't.
heavy
It doesn't
hand.
stop like that because the threat of law enforcement and law enforcement violence has existed for criminals for millennia, and it hasn't stopped them. So, like, the argument that this is what the thing is and that he somehow has succeeded where everyone else in all of history has failed before him is silly.
Mussolini was very, very good for a time at stopping the mafia in Italy. He cleaned it up. There wasn't any at a big price, but
Yes, and
you
what
can't
happened?
argue that he.
Sure, but the Italian mafia still exists today, and Mussolini does not. I mean,
Yeah, well, I mean, there is the whole.
it seems like they came out on top in that particular exchange. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I mean, there's the whole siding with Germany thing, and
broken Windows
of
policing hasn't succeeded at making Windows not break. All it's done is succeeded at putting poor people in jail. Congratulations, good job. And criminals still be criminaling. So I am really
how is nobody is commenting on we got 24 people here, and no one has started to rip on me for my pro Bukele comments. I am really disappointed in all of you guys.
They weren't there yet. They didn't hear them. You want to repeat them so you can go get rid of them?
No.
You can be canceled another day.
I need to, yeah, that's true. Not today. But I do want to know what our audience thinks of that. I mean, when you have, I don't know, this is a whole different discussion. I think we should have like a whole episode on it sometime.
There are strong allegations that the El Salvador government, this is just the AI overview from Google, under President Nayib Bukele, has been manipulating crime statistics to appear as if the country's crime rate has been significantly reduced. This has been achieved through various means, including reduced reporting of homicides and potential collaboration with gangs. There is an article in Foreign Policy, Human Rights Watch, and Reuters, which are presenting both sets of claims.
Was this before the state of exception? Because there were articles that were coming out before that were talking about that, and then the state of exception happened, and we gotta look at post state of exception, which was I think 2021.
This is in 2020. These articles are 2022, 2024, 2025. It's being reported on quite significantly right now as we speak. That basically they're not reducing crime, they're just changing the definition of what crime is to make it look lower and locking up poor people. Recipes for success. To be fair to Mussolini, who would be 140 years old if he was alive. Yes, and he managed to get the trains to run on time. This spice. The Maya Atkinson raid isn't happening the same way, but they're here. Welcome, everyone. Sorry, we're arguing about El Salvador and their awful fucking prison. Thank you for joining us.
Awful in Daedalus's opinion.
I don't know.
Let's see. So,
would you take a vacation there?
Let me look this up. Yeah, actually, I'm thinking about it. I'm not joking.
Well,
and actually,
I'm going
think my coworker just went over the.
I'm going to be unfortunately having to modify the show. It will soon be one guy talking history and another guy who's lost his kidneys, and it won't be me, surprisingly.
Yeah, I mean that's a very good joke. Also very racist. Shame on you. Kidneys are totally taken in countries that are not in Central America and Ukraine. Yes. That's actually a thing.
Asia as well, and here in the United States, there's a organ black market. It's everywhere. It's
Yeah,
absolutely
that's
everywhere.
happened quite a few times.
I will pass on a trip there. Yeah, me too.
We can get Daedalus some new kidneys. Let's see.
Good luck finding a reputable surgeon to
U.S. supports.
perform that.
I'm searching El Salvador in the news, and the only thing I can find on it is nothing about Bukele, but about us deporting people.
Yeah, it's almost like that's supplanted the news about the country itself. It's weird how that happens. It's not weird at all how
Yeah,
that happens. I'll send you the articles, but trust me, no bueno, not good.
trust me, bro.
I think President
Let's
Sunday
see.
covered this
No,
not
I,
long ago.
I I trust you. Of course, I know that you wouldn't. That you've read these. That you know that you wouldn't have an opinion that's unsupported by facts, but you know, or
I,
unsupported by some.
I think you just have to
You
remember
get what I'm saying.
that you're a significantly bigger fan of the police than I am. Uh, much bigger.
I'm not. I mean, I'm not that much bigger because the police. I'm a genocide scholar.
Yeah,
The
I
police have
know.
been
Everyone,
responsible for a lot of really bad
it's
things.
like I said before. Everyone has their own hypocrisies.
However, I also know that you can't, when your country where the police aren't effective at all, and you have, whole swaths of the country that are under kind of the iron grip of gangs, you're not going to be able to utilize the same sort of, and especially if your country's poor to begin with, you're not going to be, how are you going to handle that situation? How? I mean, that's the thing.
Well, it probably behooves you not to let it get that
I
bad.
think what the solutions, like, I don't think that an El Salvador solution would work here, but I think in El Salvador, like a Bukele solution works there fine. I think it would work also. I mean, the president of Honduras wants to follow it. And Guatemala, I believe Guatemala too, but Honduras for sure.
Hey,
Um,
hive sigh.
and she is not a far right politician at all. Look her up.
Yeah, that again. Like
She wants like seriously, they have taken note of this. They have
um,
taken note of so either that or they're fooled by these fake statistics as well. But
it,
I don't know. I think that there's something to it, and
there's
we
not.
really we're talking about something. Okay, Daedalus, we are talking about something. We got to be frank and honest. We are talking about a subject that's outside of our
Absolutely.
expertise. I
But
am not an I am not an expert in Central American politics. I have gotten more interested in it as of late. I don't know why. Central America fascinates me. It's kind of um like Guatemala, all the Honduras, El Salvador, like they have very countries like that are close to my heart because they give me Ukraine vibes. Um which is, you can
probably not.
interpret that however you want,
Probably not great for anyone.
but
Sorry. I just
but
sent you the article in foreign policy from foreign policy from this past
I will
August.
read it. I will read it later.
Just trust. Just it's like eye opening.
I'm looking up El Salvador and I'm seeing 13 hours. All of it is just about people who were deported there and wrongfully.
Yes, yes. It's a thing. Like particularly
U.S. State Department says deported Maryland resident alive and secure in El Salvador.
Uh, that's the most exciting thing
This
that's
guy's
happened in
name is
Maryland for a
Kilmar.
while. Yeah, it's been like a bullshit the entire way down. Like that's the only thing they've been reasonably successful at is deporting people who shouldn't be deported. Just it's like it is frankly staggering to me how awful Donald Trump's first couple months have been. Like, I thought it was going to be bad. I didn't think he was going to destroy the global economy and start tearing apart the judicial system in 5 minutes. Bad. I thought we'd have like a couple months of relative calm as they tried to figure out where the staplers were and unglue the desk drawers that Biden's team left shut. But no, they got right into being awful.
You underestimated them.
I did. And you've noticed I've been doing that like a lot lately. I underestimated Russia. I'm like, well, I'm sure they realize that they can't take Ukraine with 200,000 troops before.
A lot of people did.
Yeah.
A lot of people there did.
Like they have.
Quite frankly, I did. I didn't think that.
They have to know that this isn't going to work. They're just posturing. Nope. Right over the border and blown up.
And what that shows me, and I've said this on this show before, and I'm going to say it again. GRU, FSB, they are shit organs. Because ultimately, even if they know the truth, they are not willing to say that to the wizard.
Sure, but I think more readily what it shows is that I have to stop assuming that people are smarter than I'm giving them credit for.
That's your mistake. I remember once,
like, I'm very bad about that.
I met with my friend Joel, who I'm giving him a shout out right now. He's in Lviv with his Ukrainian wife. Right before this happened, I went home for the winter break, when I was living in Ukraine. And Joel's he can be a little bit of a not a fear. He kind of can be pessimistic sometimes.
An Eastern European pessimistic.
But
no,
he was really worried about the situation with Ukraine, about how it was developing, and I'm like, they're not gonna do this. And he's like, yeah, but the Kremlin might believe their own bullshit. And he was right. They totally believed their own bullshit, and that was the truth. And I'm like, there's no way. There's no way they believe their own bullshit. And holy shit, was I wrong. I was very wrong.
Yeah, I think you have a very similar problem right now with the Israeli government. Oh, I know you have a very similar problem right now with the Israeli government. They too are...
Yeah, it's hard to, they believe their own bullshit too, obviously.
Like, I sent you that from Ben Ephraim, the activist, who seems to be fairly well connected with Israelis and is Jewish himself, Jewish American, I believe. And he has these native language sources that I had to translate. But yeah, the IDF has completely admitted that they basically have done significantly less damage to Hamas than they initially reported.
Yeah.
Massive amounts of tunnels are still intact, and as best as can be determined, nothing they're doing.
Don't they have gravity penetrating bombs? They've dropped a shitload of bombs. Can't they just go beneath the fucking surface and just blow holes into it?
All bombs.
I mean, they might as
all
they
bombs
might
function
as well,
from gravity
because it's basically not there anymore. Gaza City's gone. Khan Yunis is gone.
Yeah.
Rafa's soon going to be mostly gone, and it's mostly gone, I think, already. So, I mean, they already did this much. You have a population now there that's, so traumatized. And this is actually what I thought would happen, and what I thought the strategy was. It's kind of like what the U.S. did to Japan. In World War II, if you bomb a population enough, eventually, terror can work if it is done in a certain way. And this is an absolutely horrible way they did it, but basically got the population now protesting against Hamas because they're sick of their suffering.
for all that Hamas gives a shit about it. So therefore, it's like not
They
an
don't give
effective
a
strategy.
shit, but you know, an army like Hamas is only as effective as the support it gets. It's a whole adage, you know, of like the whole principle of guerrilla warfare that, you know, guerrilla armies operate in the sea of people, and what Israel did is essentially what the Soviets did in their own counterinsurgency policy. They actually did it even more in a, well, I wouldn't say in more in a brutal way than they did a very remarkably Soviet thing, or even Russian thing. If you hit a population hard enough and demoralize them enough and traumatize them enough, eventually there's only so much, like, it does do one thing where you're willing to fight, but if it's, you know, just short of completely annihilating you, like, it's like, you know, the Nazis were really bad at this because they were really bad at counterinsurgency, because when they say drain the ocean, they really mean drain the ocean, like get rid of every bit of water there. Whereas the Soviets is like, yeah, let's make this fucking, and the Israelis too, let's make this ocean really shallow so we can see the fish that we're trying to hunt.
Yeah, but there's a
It's kind of a
huge.
different strategy.
There's a
It's
huge difference.
brutalizing them short of killing them. It's beating them within an inch of their life.
Sure, but there's a
but
problem there
sparing their life ultimately.
that I think is being missed. The problem is that in the case of Hamas, is they have as basically they don't operate in the sea of people of Gaza. They operate underneath Gaza. So like to go back a couple points, Hamas is capable of getting their support from not from the population but from elsewhere, and they're capable of operating in Gaza without the consent of the population because they built these extensive tunnel systems. So to go back to your second point about, or your first point about why they don't use bunker busting bombs, they can't. They don't know where these tunnels are. They would just be dropping them about randomly, hoping they found a spot. And if they got a spot, they get the most surface level tunnels and a small portion of it. So they did the thing, but they didn't understand how the thing works. So it wasn't effective. And all they're doing now is increasing
Then
misery.
they have to get down and dirty, which they haven't really.
Exactly, which is what I said from the start, is the IDF will not win this war if they aren't willing to go into the tunnels. And that's exactly what we've seen.
Well, then they have to change that.
It's not going to happen.
I mean, if they do,
it's
maybe
just,
maybe not.
Like as sure as death and taxes, because we see the IDF, you know, bombing Gaza and sending troops into Gaza roughly every 2 years. They go, they knock some shit over, and they leave, and the problem is still under the ground.
But this is okay. They were doing that, and this is not the same shit. They're not going to pull out of this one.
No, but until they're willing to go and confront Hamas.
And I think that they're going to have to. They probably will do this, and it's not going to be popular. It's going to get a lot of them killed, but they're going to have to do it. And I feel like that at this point, they blew it's not like the last few times that they went into Gaza. This time they fucking blew it to pieces. There's no Gaza.
Yes,
there's really nothing left. It's not going to be one of those things where they pull out, they rebuild it somehow. You have Iran funding it. No, this isn't the status quo bullshit that just happened. No, this is different. This is 100% different. And October 7th was different.
Sure, October 7th definitely was different. But like ultimately, like no matter how much they blow it up.
I don't agree with you. I like what I'm trying to say here
until they go in and start to root Hamas out of the tunnels. It's
and
just
probably
more.
what's going to happen. What is going to happen?
Maybe, but
it's not a question. It's not a question of if. It is a question of when. At this point, that's what I believe. What I think is going to happen. I might be wrong. You might be completely right. They might pull out, and then we'll wait 15 more years. It's going to take longer than that to rebuild it realistically. And then they'll be firing missiles again.
They're still firing
Actually,
missiles. They're still firing rockets.
they're still firing rockets, but you know what I mean? Like I don't think that this is like this circular cycle.
I
I think that they took it step too far with October 7th, and now they're reaping.
Who's reaping? That's
You
the
know,
no. Hamas is not reaping. That's the point. The
the
Palestinians,
people. Yeah,
yes, they're not reaping, and that's why I utterly disagree with you. Because again, until they're willing to go and attack Hamas, all they're doing is revenge killings. That's all it is. Ultimately, that's what it
yeah.
is. Um,
So
it it
then it's gonna have to change, right?
it in order for them to be successful, but there is a alternative that you don't seem to be considering. The alternative is that Israel fails, that Israel doesn't succeed, that they like their internal political pressures are mounting every day. Like there is a that they
Yeah, that's
have
a
to.
problem with Israel. Like, well, it's not a problem. It's actually kind of the bedrock of democracy there, right?
I
But
wouldn't call it the bedrock of democracy there, because that's exactly what Netanyahu's trying to undo. That's the
he's trying to
problem.
undo that.
uh,
Sure.
he's trying to
But
manipulate
that
the judiciary.
opposition to this unpopular his policies and the way that they're fighting this is what will ultimately undo it, right? So
Yes, and like the pressure is mounting to bring the hostages home. The people are very dissatisfied with the way this has worked. Not that the destruction
I don't
that's
think
been
there's any
caused for the most part.
hostages left, right? I think
There
they're all
are.
gone.
Uh, I don't believe so. No. Um, they're it's pretty still pretty regularly clamoring for the return of the remaining hostages. The ultimate issue again is that like as long as this is what it has been, I still feel that it's just the same as what's been before, just on a bigger scale. Um, at the same time, unremarked for the most part, has been the massive increase in seizures of Palestinian property in the West Bank. I think if there is going to be a thing that happens that destroys the "nothing ever happens" meme, is that Israel annexed the West Bank. Um, because right now they're very well positioned to do that because Trump isn't going to give a flying shit. Um, and to go back to what you and I were talking about the other night with Iran, I think it's less, excuse me, less likely to happen if there becomes a major campaign in Iran. So I don't think Israel is terribly interested in, you know, waiting to annex the West Bank because now they have the golden opportunity. That's, I think, probably going to be the most likely outcome of this, and then Gaza will just be a giant pile of rubble that gets basically strangles the people who live there slowly, and Hamas will carry on. They probably got tunnels all the way to Egypt that they can go hang out in. Like it's kind of like the scale of human suffering in Gaza has been horrible, and it's what we've been focusing on because it's very easy to see, I think. But the problem comes in like in recognizing that the IDF is very unwilling to confront the situation in a way that would be effective, and so what they're doing simply isn't effective. Um, and it was dramatic at the beginning because they're doing this bombing campaign and houses are falling and people are dying, but now it was cruel then, but now it just seems like utter cruelty. They're beyond anything that could be reasonable. Um, I think this is going to be a for real, like if there is a turning point in this crisis in Palestine and Israel, it's here. Like I think you're going to start to see the carte blanche that Israel's been given by the international community for basically a century start to wash away. Um, there's it's going to get a lot harder to sustain what they've done in the past. So there's always there's always the chance that Israel loses this war in reality.
I mean, that's yeah. I mean, that's there's always a chance of that for any party who engages in war.
Sure,
Anyway,
but
I need
let me
go
finish
ahead.
and then we'll sign out. It's a lot like the disparity between the capabilities of the militant groups in Hamas and the IDF is such that it seems almost unthinkable that that would happen.
That they would lose.
That the IDF would lose, yes.
I mean, stranger things have happened. I mean, not stranger things, but I mean,
Stranger Things season 5, no on Netflix. Sorry, carry on. All right, I get it. I also understand that you have work tomorrow, so I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. We are going to start resuming our regular scheduled programming again. So subscribe, hit that bell,
and
do the YouTube
see you on
things,
Wednesday.
like the stream, tell your friends. Get up, take a walk. Have a good night.